All right, so let's dive right into this blog post from keonmeng.org all about, well, a new text editor called Zed. It's titled Zed, the editor with sensible defaults for effortless Vim editing. And it was just published the other day, February 15th, 2025, the author. Refers to himself as an old software plumber. I kind of like that. Seems like he's really looking for an editor that's both user-friendly but also powerful.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
what I find really interesting is that he's
Yeah.
been a Vim user for years. You know Vim, really powerful, but sometimes complex editor. A lot of developers love.
Yeah, I've tried to use Vim myself, and let's just say that the learning curve is
Yeah.
very steep.
Yeah.
So in this deep dive, we're basically trying to understand his journey. Why is he, this author, Ang, even thinking about switching editors? What's so special about Zed that's catching his attention? And does this tell us anything about
Keybindings.
development tools?
That's a great question. That's exactly what we're going to try to uncover. And one of the big things that really stood out to me in the post was Ang's frustration with having to constantly tweak and customize Vim. You know, he seems to be looking for an editor. That just works right out of the box.
Right, so you're saying he wants something with sensible defaults, like the title of the post says. But what exactly does that mean in the world of text editors?
Well, think about it this way. If you buy a new phone, you kind of expect to be able to make calls, send text messages without having to go into some settings menus, right? You want it to just intuitively work. It's kind of the same with a text editor.
Yeah.
Especially for somebody like Ang, who's been coding for a while. You know his time is valuable, and he doesn't want to waste it on configuration.
Right, you want to focus on the coding, not messing around with settings.
Exactly, and that's where Zed comes in. Ang highlights 5 main features that really caught his eye. Vim key bindings, a really quick file finder, multi-file search and replace, LSP support, and even AI chat integration.
Okay, some of those sound pretty self-explanatory, like the file finder, search and replace. But others, like LSP and AI chat, I think we might need a little bit more explanation on those.
Yeah, definitely. Let's start with LSP, which stands for Language Server Protocol. Now, without getting too technical, this is basically a way for your editor to talk to a specialized server for the programming language they're using.
So, imagine you're writing some JavaScript code, and your editor can suddenly get real-time feedback on errors, suggestions for completing your code, and even help you restructure it on the fly.
Exactly. It's like having a really smart coding buddy looking over your shoulder, giving you advice.
That sounds really useful, especially if you're working on a complex project.
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge productivity booster. And then we have the AI chat integration, which is where things get really interesting when you think about this new generation of tools.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. We're hearing so much about AI these days, and I'm really curious how it plays into Zed.
Well, imagine being able to just ask the editor questions about your code, or get help troubleshooting a bug, or even have it generate code snippets for you based on what you describe.
Wow, that's starting to sound less like a text editor and more like a full-on AI coding assistant.
Yeah. It is pushing the boundaries of what we traditionally think of as a text editor, that's for sure. But let's go back to something Ang emphasized. The Vim key bindings. He even included a code snippet in the post showing how to customize the escape key using JJ, which is a common trick. For Vim users...
So I'm guessing this is a big deal. For someone coming from Vim, right, it's all about maintaining that muscle memory and speed. It means going from touch typing to hunting and pecking.
That's a great analogy. Zed seems to understand that. For a lot of longtime Vim users, switching editors can be a really jarring experience. So by offering Vim key bindings out of the box, it's trying to make that transition a lot smoother. But the customization snippet is also interesting.
You mean the part where he shows how to tweak it even further to his liking. I gotta admit, that's what initially made me wonder if all these sensible defaults might be a bit too limiting for someone who really likes to customize their setup.
It's a good question. And this is where the comparison to Helix comes in. Ang calls Helix a postmodern editor. But, interestingly, it seems to struggle with implementing that same JJ escape key behavior that Zed handles so well.
Wait, hold on. Isn't that kind of ironic? This postmodern editor can't handle a classic Vim trick.
Yeah, it's a good point. And maybe it highlights that. Even when you're trying to innovate and push boundaries, you can't forget about those fundamental features that experienced users rely on.
So maybe it's not about the cutting edge, just for the sake of it. It's about providing a really solid foundation that respects existing workflows while still offering that room for customization. But maybe that's the topic for our next segment.
Yeah. You know, it's funny you should mention cutting edge.
Yeah.
Because that brings us back to Helix. Helix is branded as this super innovative editor, but it's struggling with something as basic as that JJ binding.
Yeah, which kind of makes you wonder if all that innovation comes at the cost of overlooking those core features that experienced users rely on. I mean, switching editors is already a big leap, but having to relearn basic key bindings on top of that, that's a whole other level of frustration.
Exactly, you're totally right. For somebody like Ang, who's clearly a seasoned developer, those key bindings aren't just about familiarity, they're about efficiency. Imagine spending years honing your skills, being able to navigate and edit code really quickly,
Yeah.
and then suddenly,
Wait, you're forced to slow down.
Yeah.
Like, you're a new editor. Doesn't speak your language. It'd be like, Rasa, a chef, suddenly having to cook.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, now that's a comparison I can understand. You're used to working at a certain pace, and then suddenly everything feels clunky and slow. So it seems like Zed is trying to
strike a balance, offering those familiar Vim key bindings as a default.
but also giving you the option to tweak things further if you need to.
Yeah. It's like they're saying, hey, we get you. We respect your existing workflows, but we also want to introduce you to a new way of doing things. It's not about forcing you into a box. It's about giving you a starting point that you can then adapt to your own needs.
And that code snippet that Aang provided, the one where he shows how to customize the escape key using JJ, that's a perfect example of this approach, right? It shows that you can have a sensible default without sacrificing the flexibility to fine-tune
your setup. It's about evolution, not revolution.
Yeah.
Zed isn't trying to reinvent the wheel. It's taking what works well in Vim and integrating it into a modern editor with all the bells and whistles.
Speaking of bells and whistles, let's talk a little bit more about those AI features.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea of having an editor that can answer your questions, help you debug, and even generate code snippets is pretty mind-blowing. Do you think this is where the future of coding is headed? Towards a world where we're basically collaborating with AI assistants?
It's certainly a fascinating possibility. We're already seeing AI make its way into all sorts of creative fields, so it's only natural that it would start to play a bigger role.
In software development, too. But I think it's important to remember that AI is a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad.
So the question isn't really whether AI is good or bad, but rather how we choose to use it.
Precisely. It's up to us as developers to make sure that we're using AI in a way that enhances our abilities, not replaces them. We need to be mindful of the potential pitfalls, but also embrace the opportunities that AI presents. I mean, let's be honest. There are days when I stare at a piece of code for hours, trying to figure out why it's not working, and I wish I had a magic AI button that could just fix it for me. But at the same time, there's something incredibly satisfying about finally figuring it out on your own, about that aha moment when you crack the code.
I couldn't agree more. There's a certain joy in the process of problem solving, of digging into the code and figuring things out. And I don't think that'll ever go away, even with the rise of AI.
Maybe it's about finding the right balance, using AI to handle those repetitive or tedious tasks, freeing up our mental energy to focus on the more challenging and creative aspects of coding, kind of like having an apprentice who can handle the grunt work while you focus on the big picture.
Yeah, I like that analogy. It's about delegation, about leveraging the strengths of both humans and machines to create something truly remarkable. But ultimately, it comes down to the individual developer and what they're palatable with. Some might embrace AI wholeheartedly, while others might prefer to maintain a more hands-on approach.
It's all about finding the right tool for the job and the right approach for the individual, right? Absolutely. And that brings us back to Aang and his decision to explore Zed. Clearly, he's looking for a tool that aligns with his values and priorities as a developer. And who knows, maybe Zed will be the perfect fit. Maybe it won't. But the important thing is that he's not afraid to try new things, to challenge his assumptions, and to constantly seek out ways to improve his craft.
Which is a great reminder for all of us, really. The world of software development is constantly evolving, and we need to be willing to adapt and grow along with it, whether that means embracing new tools, exploring new technologies, or simply questioning our own habits and routines. The key is to stay curious and never stop learning.
Well said. Now, before we move on to our final thoughts, I think it's important to acknowledge that this whole discussion about AI and coding raises some interesting ethical questions. While we won't delve into those today, it's something for all of us to ponder as we move forward into this exciting new era
Of software development.
Absolutely. So on that note, let's wrap up this deep dive with some final reflections on what Aang's experience with Zed tells us about the future of coding and the evolving relationship between developers and their tools. We talked a lot about Zed's features, from Vim keybindings to AI chat integration. But I think what really stands out to me is the underlying philosophy behind the editor.
Yeah, it really feels like a shift in thinking. It's not just about throwing a bunch of features at developers and seeing what sticks. It's about understanding their needs, respecting their workflows,
And
providing a really solid foundation to build upon.
And that whole idea of sensible defaults that Aang emphasized in his post, that seems to be like at the heart of it all, right? Creating an editor that just works out of the box, but without sacrificing the flexibility for customization that I think a lot of experienced developers really want.
I like finding that perfect balance.
What's so between?
Convenience and control. You want an editor. That makes your life easier.
Yeah.
But you also don't want to feel like you're being boxed in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like the difference between having a personal chef who can whip up amazing meals, but who also lets you experiment in the kitchen when you feel like it.
Exactly. That's a great analogy. And I think that's where Zed really shines. It's not about dictating a specific workflow, but it's about empowering developers to work in a way that feels natural and efficient for them.
It's like saying, hey, we trust you. We've provided a solid starting point. But ultimately, it's your kitchen, your tools, your masterpiece.
Exactly. And that sense of trust is really important, especially in the context of AI-assisted coding. We're essentially handing over some of the control to the machine. So we need to feel confident that it's going to work with us, not against us.
Right. I mean, we've all had those moments where autocorrect just goes completely rogue and like, butchers a text message. Imagine that happening with your code.
Oh, yeah. That's definitely a concern. I think that's why it's so important to have tools like Zed that are designed with both convenience and control in mind. You want that AI assistance to be there when you need it, but you also want to be able to step in and take over when necessary.
So maybe it's not about choosing between human and machine, but finding the right way for them to collaborate. It's kind of like a dance where each partner leads and follows in turn, creating something really beautiful, intricate.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And I think that's what Aang is ultimately searching for, an editor that can seamlessly integrate with his own unique style and workflow, augmenting his abilities rather than replacing them.
And maybe that's the key takeaway for all of us as we navigate this
ever-evolving world of software development. It's not just about finding most powerful or the most innovative tools. It's about finding the tools that resonate with us, that inspire us, that empower us to create our best work. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the next time you find yourself wrestling with your editor, take a moment to step back, ask yourself, is this tool helping me or hindering me? Does it spark joy or frustration?
And if the answer isn't what you hoped for, maybe it's time to explore some new possibilities. There's a whole world of amazing editors out there, each with its own
unique
strengths and quirks.
Who knows? You might just stumble upon your own perfect coding companion, just like Aang might have with Zed. And as we all know, the right tool can make all the difference.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the world of text editors and AI-assisted coding. We've explored some fascinating ideas, challenged some assumptions, and hopefully sparked some new thoughts
and inspirations
along the way.
So until next time, happy coding, everyone. May your tools be sharp, your minds clear, and your code bug-free.